What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing well. Welcome to the extended cut, minimally edited podcast version of this week's episode, where we're going to take a look at the last 7 years I've spent creating content for private practice skills and ask the question, is being a content creator worth it? When I look back at some of the first things I started making in 2018, I look at Marie in those videos and I think, what a sweet little baby she was then. And now, 7 years, 2 kids, a pandemic, and 4 moves later, I'm still here. Even though I've been a content creator for 15 years, I won't get into that in this episode. I made an episode about that a long time ago, about prior channels I had before this one. It's only been for the last 5 years that content creation has been my primary source of income. Yes, I make quite a bit more money making these YouTube videos than I make seeing my therapy clients half time. So given that I've been doing this for a minute and the landscape of content creation has changed so much over the years, oh my goodness, I thought I would reflect back and ask the question, is it worth it being a content creator? Now, of course, the title of this episode is a little bit tongue-in-cheek because the ultimate answer is it depends. Okay, spoiler alert, that is the answer. But I'm going to break it down in this episode by looking at some of the pros and cons I've experienced as a content creator over the years so that you can kind of hear those and reflect on them for yourself. Before I get into all the pros and cons of being a content creator, let me sort of debunk, I guess, something that I hear pop up not infrequently. And that is being a content creator a real job? Because right, all you have to do is just, record yourself jibber jabbering about some stuff and just post it online, and anyone can do that, right? Yes, anyone can do that. And you can just, that's what the free speech, anyone can do that. Now, of course, that could be the full extent of content creation. Literally anyone can pull out their phone and just record themselves talking, post it online, and that's it. But content creation in a way that pays your bills, I would say, does require a level of commitment and strategy that absolutely, yes, it is a real job. This is one of those things where in the land of the internet, there's people who go oh my gosh, content creators, you're not working a real job. And then there's other people in the other camp that are my job as a content creator is so much harder than your 9 to 5. And I think all of that is just a whole bunch of ridiculous nonsense, to be honest. Being a content creator is a real job with pros and cons, just like any other real job. One is not more legit than another or less than it's a job. If you're going to generate revenue from content creation, it's a job. To kind of get into the weeds of it a little bit, if you're trying to generate income from creating content, it takes more planning and strategy and effort to come up with a plan that consistently generates revenue for you. So it is much more involved than just saying I have some opinions and I'm going to post them on the internet. And maybe some people might go viral for just sort of accidentally just sharing what's on their mind. But if you want to keep that up and make it be a consistent source of revenue, you'd still have to be strategic going forward. And of course, most of us are not going to go viral from the get-go. So you have to plan each piece of content. You have to have a brand identity where each piece of content fits within your greater brand, right? If the next episode I posted was a recipe, my favorite recipe, and then the episode after that is how to change your oil in your car. If there wasn't consistency or some kind of consistency across your content, you're not going to get traction unless you're just that famous already. If you're Oprah or Martha Stewart, different situation, but they still had to do this strategy before when they first started creating, the 1990s version of content, which was being on TV. But same thing. They had to be consistent in one area and then expand into more areas. Even just taking this episode as an example that I'm making right now, it could, to the untrained eye, look like I just hit record on my camera and I'm just jibber jabbering. And a little bit of this isn't totally scripted, but I did have to come up with the video idea. Before this video idea, I had to come up with an entire brand. What are the things Marie focuses on and who am I speaking to? And that the video idea has to fit within that brand. And then I had to come up with how to structure this episode, make sure I'm not just repeating whatever's already available out there, adding my own point of view, discussing the pros and cons, making sure I'm thorough and listing them out. I invited you all to submit your questions, which I had to do in advance of hitting the record button. And not to mention that I have a set up teardown studio, so I spend 45 minutes every week setting up my lights and my camera and everything, and then tearing it down again so that I can see therapy clients who sit on this couch and we can't be having microphones and cameras hanging out. So, there's that. And then I have to edit it. And then even when you post it, there's a whole strategy. If it sounds like I'm complaining, I'm not. I'm just trying to justify that I'm working. I'm not saying that my job is harder than anybody else's. I think in a lot of ways my job is easier than a lot of jobs, but it's still a job. I'm working. When all is said and done, I spend about 20 hours a week doing everything I just said. And even then, you could do all of those steps week in and week out for a long time and never generate any income. There's still strategy on top of that to figure out how to monetize the content you're creating. Generally, once you are starting to generate income from creating content, there are deadlines that are built in, even though you are just like posting whatever whenever you feel like it. You start to contract with brands, or for a lot of us who create content, we have sponsor deals with brands, or we need to post about an upcoming deal that an affiliate is launching. And so I can't just say like, I don't really feel like posting this week, so I'm going to skip it, because I probably contracted with the brand or two or more where I need to post some content that week in order to fulfill the deliverable that I contracted saying I would do. So in that sense, as you start to contract with different brands who sponsor your content, or you have some affiliate monetized partnership with, you have to deliver on the deadlines that you contracted with them. In that sense, you do kind of work for other people a little bit, you know what I mean? Now, of course, when I build those contracts, I have full say about like, do I even want to do a contract with this brand, first of all? And do I want to engage in any sponsored content? What are the terms of that contract? Can I build in some flexibility? Can I can determine my rate, all of those things. It's all negotiable. And in the end of the day, if the brand is not willing to negotiate to a degree that I'm comfortable signing off on, then I don't have to sign a contract. So it's still like self-imposed, but you still sign a contract and you have to deliver on the thing you said you would do. It feels very similar to, when you run your own private practice, you get to decide like how many clients a week do you want to see, and what you get to set your rate and all of those things. So you can always refer out if somebody contacts you and they're not a good fit, or you're already full, or that sort of thing. But if you've already signed on with a new client, like you don't just wake up one morning and say like, I don't really feel like it today, so like maybe not this week, I'll see you next week. Of course, there are appropriate scenarios where we cancel if we're sick or something significant, urgent comes up, unforeseen, that sort of thing. But you don't just show up when you feel like it. It's a commitment that you made and you have to deliver on it. Okay, so that was a lot of jibber jabber. I might only put all of that in the extended cut version as well. But now that we got some of that out of the way, let's take a look at some of the pros of being a content creator. Why would someone want to do this? And keep in mind, these are from my lens, from my experience, so somebody else might have a totally different list of pros and cons. For me, my number one pro is the super flexible schedule. I created private practice skills specifically because I was hoping to have children, and I wanted to have the flexibility to set down whatever I was working on to attend to my children and then pick up whatever I was working on later. And as someone who exclusively saw therapy clients to generate income prior, as well as teaching classes, what I had been doing, you couldn't just sit down and attend to your child. You can't stop the middle of your therapy session and go be with your child. You can't pause in the middle of a lecture and go be with your child, but I could record a video, get interrupted, push pause, attend to my child, come back, start recording again. And especially in those early years, especially during the pandemic, I was interrupted so much because I had 2 babies during the pandemic without childcare for big chunks of it, like a good 6 months. And even when I had childcare, I was doing it like 1 day a week for a while. I was interrupted a lot. So the flexibility was an absolute game changer for me, because if I was generating all that income via therapy clients exclusively, then I would have to be also open to having much more childcare, which costs more money. And also, it was a value of mine that if I had an option for being with my kids more during those early years, then I was going to try to find it. And that has been true so much. The flexibility is one of the biggest pros, in my opinion. Another huge pro of being a content creator that has proven to be so invaluable to me is having total ownership of not just my schedule, but like the entire business of content creation. There is no one telling me what to do. And in prior workplaces, I often had a lot of trouble working for other people because sometimes what people were asking me to do didn't align with my values. People were expecting me to work at burnout levels. People were not paying me enough. I don't thrive in places where I work for somebody else, except for in very limited circumstances where the other person has a lot of respect for my autonomy. And that's both a strength and a weakness of mine. Honestly, I don't do a really good job working for other people, but I do a really good job working for myself. So having total ownership is a pro for me. Another pro of being a content creator is the income potential. Of course, like this is one of the things that gets glamorized in spaces where people are like, oh, that would be so nice to just create content and make money. Your income potential has a very high ceiling, especially when you compare it to other options where you're trading your time for your money, like seeing therapy clients, which I find very rewarding, but I have to be sitting in the chair seeing the therapy client in order to generate that income. And as a content creator, I can spend quite a bit of time working on a piece of content, but then once it's out there, it can continue to generate income even once I'm done working on it. This is called leveraged income, even though a lot of people will casually refer to it as passive income. I've talked about the difference between those two things in prior videos about passive income, so I'll link to some of those below if you're curious about that. But basically, as a content creator, there's almost no ceiling to how much revenue you could potentially generate if you're able to grow your audience. There's also ways to monetize the same piece of content multiple times over, and so you can grow how many income streams you have. I mean, you think about it, this piece of content that you are partaking in, you are consuming right now is just one piece of content, but I'm going to post it to YouTube, which will generate ad revenue. Not a ton of ad revenue, thanks YouTube. It's gone down over the years, but some income. It's substantial. And also, this episode is sponsored. So I'm generating income from the sponsorship on this episode as it posts to YouTube. And it's also sponsored as a podcast format. So I'm getting sponsored in two different formats from this same episode by two different sponsors. And also, someone could multiply that content. I'm not super interested in this and super great at it, but I could pull shorts, like little snippets from this episode and post them to Instagram. And also, I can grow my audience through content like this. If people end up on my email list and I have something to sell to them, like I can just go on and on. The piece of content can generate income from multiple income streams, which I'm not totally going to break down in this episode since I have covered that in other episodes. But you can really optimize your income as a content creator in a lot of ways. Another pro of being a content creator is it offers me an outlet for the abundance of creative energy that I seem to always need an outlet for. When I first started Private Practice Skills in 2018, I frequently told my husband that it was like my latest DIY project that lived inside of the internet and inside of my computer, so that I was no longer littering our house with the endless amounts of DIY projects that I inevitably would be working on. Like our walls were covered in all manner of textile arts and whatever art project I was working on. I mean, I still garden, so that one's like a never-ending DIY project because the garden is very dynamic, but I had a lot of static DIY projects that I created that then would end up living in our home, and sometimes it was to my husband's chagrin. So now my DIY projects live on the internet. They are digitized, and that is a win for me, which I know is very specific to Marie, but I have to have outlets for my creative energy. I will always create. That's just embedded in my identity. So this is a great opportunity for me to do it in a way that feels rewarding and productive and also generates income. Another huge pro of being a content creator that I don't often hear folks talk about is that it helps develop my own personal brand. Like Marie Fang, I will always have on my resume private practice skills. Even if I quit all of private practice skills tomorrow, which I'm not, this is now on my resume. So I can leverage this platform, this brand that I've built to allow me to lean into opportunities that might not exist if I hadn't built private practice skills. So not only are there a bunch of pros to being a content creator while you're a content creator, but it's also something you can use in your resume. And I do know a lot of folks who have dreams that extend beyond content creation, but who are leveraging content creation to lean into those dreams. Like if your goal is to be an author or a speaker, I mean, it could be any number of things, then kind of building a brand as a content creator can help kind of create that sense of credibility, of trustworthiness. People can get a sense of who you are and what you're able to build through whatever your content is. Personally, I'm just enjoying being a content creator as like, the end game. But I do have a sense of like, if I ever wanted to stop doing this, that what I've done with private practice skills will continue to be an asset for me going forward. Unless I get canceled and then it cancel culture, man. Well, we'll get into the cons later. Okay, and this is something that is landing squarely in my pros list, but for somebody else could be one of the biggest cons. And that's that I get to be by myself a lot. I love spending time with other people. I lean a little bit more extroverted than introverted, but I'm also extremely highly sensitive. So having time to myself in a lifestyle that otherwise is very full of time spent with other people is a gift. So to be able to say like, I'm carving out time for me and I'm working while I'm doing it is very, very useful because I spent a lot of time by myself. And if I were generating my income by seeing therapy clients exclusively, I'd have to see more people with my time. And I'm already seeing about 8 to 10 therapy clients per week right now. I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, which sometimes feels like my house feels like suddenly there's 10 people in it instead of just 4. And I'm fortunate enough to have a really robust circle of friendships, social life. So being able to be by myself and just think of ideas for a video and then recording them and editing them, it's just like a really peaceful, like meditative time to myself. Now, all that said, that's like a Marie pro because I hear from so many therapists just how isolating this profession can be. And so adding another thing where you're going to be by yourself a lot could be a huge con. That could be the reason why this isn't a good fit for some people. And just like a little side tangent about this note of like being by yourself, I think sometimes there's a perception that content creators are like surrounded and really well supported because you're posting content on social media and there's people engaging with your stuff online. And so therefore, you kind of feel supported and surrounded maybe in some ways. But at least for me, those online like parasocial interactions, how do I phrase this? It's like those are meaningful and significant interactions, but they're not social support for me. Like almost the opposite. Like I have to cling even more intensely to social support that doesn't know me in a parasocial context. Like when I meet a new therapist in San Diego and they don't know about private practice skills, I wait as long as I can to tell them about it. And that brings me so much joy that we're just friends and they don't know me from online. I'm aware as I say that might come across as sounding ungrateful for all the folks who find this content useful. I am so grateful, but I wouldn't want somebody to see that, you have this many subscribers or this many views. And so therefore, like you're well supported. I think there's a lot of data that points to like the more following you have in whatever format you're putting yourself out there, the more isolating it has the potential to be, because sometimes it can be hard to know if somebody is interested in you just because of that content or because of that persona you're putting out there. And I try to be as authentic as possible, but it's still like a highlight reel. Like I'm not recording when I'm crying, like usually, right? Because that's my private personal time, right? So you're not witnessing kind of all the facets and aspects of who I am. So if I were to see whoever's interacting with my stuff online as my social support, I think it's actually a recipe for feeling really isolated. So to me, that's like, I'm grateful that the content is doing something helpful for all of you who are participating. Hopefully most of you who are consuming the content, but that's not a replacement for social support. That was a little bonus side tangent for those of you listening to the extended cut version of this. And before we get into the cons of being a content creator, I'd like to thank Powbox for sponsoring this episode. It wasn't until a couple years ago that I first learned that even with a signed BAA, Google Workspace and Microsoft 365 can't guarantee that 100% of the messages going in and out are HIPAA secure. So without a tool like Powbox operating on the back end, it's almost impossible to stay HIPAA secure unless you forego email altogether. Even if you exclusively use a secure portal to discuss protected health information with your clients, there's still going to be potential clients reaching out initially, and also some clients who will still try to email you because, I don't know, they forgot their password for their portal and they're trying to reach out. So with a tool like Powbox, you can guarantee that every single message is protected. Powbox is super easy to set up, and it's kind of a one and done situation. Like, you just spend a few minutes initially setting it up, and then it's just continuously quietly running in the background. Powbox offers a 14-day free trial to everybody, and they're offering a special discount to Private Practice Skills listeners. Just use coupon code SKILLS at checkout in order to receive $250 off your first year of Powbox. That's Powbox spelled Paubox. Thank you again to Powbox for sponsoring this episode, and now on to the cons of being a content creator. And I feel like this has gotten kind of more trendy to talk about. Like, if you do a Google search right now for, is it worth it to be a content creator? Then there's a lot of stuff about like, watch out for these downsides. Here's why no one should be a content creator, like that kind of stuff. And rather than 5 or 7 years ago when I started this stuff, it was like, oh my gosh, content creation is the best. So all that said, there are quite a few cons to being a content creator, which I think the world is catching up to. But let's get into what some of the cons have been for me. Some of the cons have made both the pros and the cons list, and the top con in my mind is having total ownership over my content creation business. How is that something that's both on the pros and the cons list? Good question. Because this whole thing is run by me and only me, then I'm like the captain of the entire ship. So like, if the ship sinks, I'm going down with it, so to speak. Like, if there's any kind of mess up, it's on me. It's on my name. If there's any kind of failure, I feel the full brunt force of that failure. Like, I did that all by myself. It's not like my boss made me do it. Like, I am my boss. I made me do it. A metaphor that came to mind as I was thinking about how to describe this is, I used to be a nanny back in the day when I was in graduate school, and the kids that I nannied were ages 3 to 7 throughout the 4 years that I watched these twins. And was it hard work to nanny these two children? Absolutely. Were there some parts where I was thinking like, this would be so much easier if it was my own kids because I could decide how I wanted to do it? Definitely. But now that I have my very own children who are mine and solely mine, and it's not just a job to watch somebody else's children, it is way more work to have sole ownership. Like, anything that happens with these kids, like, it's on me. Like, it's on me and my husband. But there's not like, well, yeah, I did my best during the 4 hours that I was there that afternoon, but these are your kids, so like, good luck. There's no signing off, there's no clocking off. Even if you are having great boundaries with your work life, like, it takes up space in your brain, like how having your own children takes up space in your brain way differently than like nannying somebody else's kids. That's not a perfect metaphor. I hope that wasn't offensive in any ways, but that was the best metaphor I could think of. Another con of being a content creator is income instability. I've seen this trend lately of like full-time content creators are quitting their content creator job and going back to a 9-to-5 job. So the tables have turned. And for a lot of folks in that camp, they're saying like they're ditching content creation because of the income instability, amongst other reasons. Because yes, your potential for income is much higher, like the ceiling is much higher for how much income you can make, but you're not getting the same salary every 2 weeks or every month month in and month out. You might have one really great month and then 3 super slow months. So if you're looking for really reliable, stable income, like content creation might not be the best fit. Now, what I'll say to this is, I've just developed a strategy over the years where just because I have a really great month, I don't expect that all the months after that will be just as great. And I budget based on looking at average annual revenues and then just kind of projecting out based on like ups and downs that have happened over the last quarter or so, because it does go up and down depending on the season, depending on what I've been working on and that sort of thing as well. So I make financial decisions very conservatively. Now, I know I said that this is a con, that income is less stable, but nonetheless, my annual average is way higher than I could reasonably earn. Even if I saw therapy clients full time, I'd have to jack up my rate like 2x or 3x and see more than 20 clients a week to earn what I'm making right now, working a total of like 35 hours a week most weeks. And just kind of as like a sub point within the income and stability piece, like it takes a really long time to generate income from content creation. So that's also a factor to consider as a con, because you're going to put in a lot of work, usually the most work up front at the beginning, and not get paid at all, probably for a very long time. And when you first get paid, it's probably going to be very little. So you have to have some sort of financial stability available to you outside of content creation while you spend a considerable amount of time and effort creating content and not making money. Another con of being a content creator is the flexible schedule can really come back to bite a lot of us. Because we're working for ourselves, it's all on us. So sometimes the pressure to make sure that the business model is staying afloat and all of that can make it really easy to slide on our work-life balance type of boundaries and end up working a lot more during weird hours that you would never be okay with in most workplace settings. A lot of this feels similar to if you run your own private practice and set your own schedule and you kind of get into that thing where you're like, well, but that client was only free in the evening, so I know I'm not trying to work in the evenings, but I just like scooch one in, and okay, maybe I'll just like scooch one more, and you can start to see how easy it is to just slip with your boundaries when you are in charge of your own schedule. Because that client, one, you could help that client, and you can flex. You can flex your schedule, and I think there is benefit of flexing from time to time, but there has to be an edge to the flexing. Otherwise, you're just like giving your time over to your business. And I've definitely done that at points along the way with private practice skills. Another con of being a content creator that I don't hear people share that often is the vulnerability of just putting yourself out there. And I mean, this could be the vulnerability of like if you're sharing bits of your experience or your story, but it's vulnerable to put anything out there. Like if you're talking about something else unrelated to your life story, that's still a piece of content you created and you're putting it out there. It'd be like putting a piece of art that you created on display or performing, a piano recital or something. Like maybe you're not sharing some vulnerable story of yours, but you're putting a piece of yourself out there to be scrutinized, and you don't know in advance how people are going to react. And even if no one sees it, that's already vulnerable. Like, oh my gosh, I put this thing out there. I think that's a very real reason why a lot of folks never engage with content creation. Is just like, it's a huge risk to just put yourself out there and have to feel all the feelings that come with it. Like whatever your insecurities are, they will be amplified. I guarantee it, whether it's about your appearance or how you sound, or like if you feel like people will care about what you have to say, like whatever your insecurities are, they will get amped up and highlighted if you create content of any sort. Another con is dealing with haters. And I know sometimes we use this term haters, and some people really are just like mad. They want to be the hater. But sometimes it's like constructive feedback that's just hard to hear, or people who are leaving their comments don't always think about the fact that there's a human on the other side potentially reading it or listening and feeling human emotions in response, but it's real. I used to say that I'm like overly sensitive to these things, but now that I talk to other people, I'm like, no, we're all pretty sensitive to that. Most of us are. And I think a lot of content creators say like it gets better over time. And in a way it does, but for me, it only gets better really because I know that I've dealt with it before. So I know that the feeling that I feel when I get negative feedback will pass, and that helps me cope with it. but the feeling is still there when it's happening, you know? It's kind of like if you fall down and you skin your knee the first time versus if you've done it 100 times, you're like, yeah, I'm going to put a Band-Aid on it. It'll get better, but I don't have to like this. I don't have to like this. I think even bigger than just the con of, people not liking your content is like bigger, riskier concerns. Like I'm thinking of things like stalking behavior, or even like things escalating to the point of doxing. Like this is stuff that I think about like a lot, like just making sure I protect myself and my family. And so I want to show up authentically, but I also, I just know that there are nefarious individuals out there. There was somebody who for a while was finding my profile on any sort of anonymous page that they could find, a place where they could leave anonymous reviews. And leaving really awful reviews. I to this day don't know who it was. They were masquerading as a client of mine, but based on what they were writing, they're not. And yeah, I mean, that's awful to see that this person is like leaving as many reviews as they can to try to take down my therapy practice, when they're clearly upset about what I'm creating for private practice skills. So there's even like a defamation issue in there as well, where somebody's like trying to take down my business. So I talked about that issue in an episode I did a couple years ago about the problem with anonymous review websites, where this was happening for me. But I know it can play out in different ways. I unfortunately, in my circle of like content creator friends, like I've seen people deal with legitimate scary stalking situations. Friends who've had to move to new countries because of that, go to court because of that. So like the stuff is real, and the internet can be really scary. So I think that that's, to me, a huge con, not just the haters, because the haters gonna hate, okay? What was that Little Women song? Haters, they're gonna hate. And players, they're gonna play. But yeah, that's gonna happen no matter what, no matter where you are. But the scary stuff, I think you're opened up to a lot more of it when you're putting yourself out there on the internet. Another con of being a content creator is you have to consistently have creative output. Emphasis on consistent and emphasis on creative. I think if it was just one or the other, like you just had to be consistent or you just had to be creative, it might feel more feasible. But the fact that you kind of have to be consistent to feed the algorithm, and it still has to be like new, innovative, creative content every single time, it could feel like a lot of pressure. I've felt that pressure at times, and I've just coped by giving myself permission to be a little less creative sometimes, okay? And I'll do a more low-key episode or a Q&A, or I won't edit it as intensely, or I just take a little mental break from having to be so on it. But overall, you still have to be consistent and creative, and that can wear on you eventually. Another con of being a content creator is you have to keep up with an ever-changing landscape. And this is true in any job, honestly, but sometimes it feels like it just happens so quickly. Like sometimes it's literally overnight as a content creator where you are just adjusting to like, oh, there's a new algorithm release. Like I remember the apocalypse that came when Instagram changed the algorithm from being chronological to putting like the most liked posts first. This feels like ancient history to me because Instagram has like changed identities to me like many times over since I even started 7 years ago. But yeah, when I started in 2018, it used to be that if you logged into Instagram, it just showed the posts of whoever you had been following, and like whatever the most recent post was on top, and you could scroll down until you reached the point where you last opened Instagram. And it even had like a little bar that said like you're all caught up or like something like that, like where you last left off. And so there was no like algorithmic constant feed of content. Like the Explore You page like changed really quickly overnight. Like there used to be no what do they call? No, Explore You. See, even though I'm a content creator, I'm like kind of under a rock. Yeah, like the algorithm can change literally overnight, and then you just kind of have to adjust. Like some of the ways I've seen that shift for me specifically in my little Nook is when I first started Private Practice Skills, the entire goal, the entire objective of mine was to make it so much more accessible to find the basic skills and information related to starting and growing a successful private practice because it was so hard to find in 2018. And now you can find that information everywhere. You can literally ask ChatGPT to give you a checklist of what to do, and it will walk you through some real decent steps. Like if you follow along, you'll get there. The skills are there. But now it's more about creating humanized content. And unfortunately, right now, the algorithm is rewarding very sensationalized content. So anything with extreme emotionality gets rewarded in the algorithm. And so there's less space for nuance. Something that I've opted for to cope with this, because honestly, most things are quite nuanced in my opinion, is I've just decided to no longer feed the algorithm, but just post whatever the heck I feel like posting, knowing that the algorithm is not going to reward me for it. And you can actually watch, like over the years, my video view count has declined since I've stopped trying to feed the algorithm. Like I actually posted a video maybe 2 or 3 years ago where I said I was going to pivot, and I did that, and my views are going down. And to me, that's not a loss because the win is that I get to still show up authentically. And yeah, the algorithm doesn't understand nuance or reward it. So that's kind of the trade-off. And it is a con because then I guess my income potential could be even higher than it is now if I was just leaning hard into feeding the algorithm. But then it would be inauthentic. So that would be just a different con that I'm not willing to sign up for. Another con of being a content creator is that you have more exposure or vulnerability to legal action. And I wasn't really fearful of this earlier on because I just thought like, okay, well, Marie, you're not doing anything illegal, so you're good. But people will take legal action even if you are following the rules. And I've shared purposefully, vaguely, but you could probably figure out who it is, about this incident where I exercised my right to free speech to share my opinion about a specific brand via videos on my YouTube channel. And what they did was they had their legal team claim defamation against me in a cease and desist letter. So I hired a lawyer to look at it, and they told me that it was bunk. I was well within my right of free speech in how I spoke about their company because I was clear that I was sharing opinions and I was sharing information that is available out there. I was not making up information, for example. But I ended up having to throw down several $1,000s in lawyer fees to have my lawyer interact with their lawyers to basically be like, hey, you're using legal stuff to bully this single person content creator. But they were threatening to sue me and all of these things. They wouldn't have had a case, but that still was costly, emotionally, costly financially. And yeah, that could happen again at any point. So I'm very aware of that now that I've been through that of like, oh, legal action can come from anywhere, even if you are following all the rules. And another con that I think I kind of touched on a little bit already is that it's possible for the algorithm to become your boss. The algorithm of whatever platform or platforms you're utilizing to put your content out there. And somewhere you're going to end up engaging with an algorithm, even if, let's say, you have your own Substack or email list or something that you totally own that's algorithm free. You still have to build that audience from somewhere. And I suppose there could be some really creative ways to build an audience that's algorithm free. Like, I don't know, if I went outside, if I went to downtown San Diego and I started, I don't know, sharing about private practice skills in a free speech public area and handing out cards for people to sign up for my email list. Listen, if you're creating content, you're participating in an algorithm somewhere, and the algorithm, it's always changing, but it could be really easy to feel like you need to make content that is rewarded by the algorithm. And if you overly lean into that, you can really lose sight of what it is that you're trying to speak about, what your purpose is with the brand that you're building, because now you're just making content that the algorithm likes. It's kind of like what can happen if like you sort of take on the interests and likes of somebody that you think is really cool. And there's some amount of that's worthwhile and authentic to say like, yeah, I will do an activity with my husband because he likes it, but there has to be a line somewhere where I can say like, I'm not just 100% doing only activities that he likes, that I'm also doing activities that I like, regardless of whether he likes it or not. Maybe he might join me for some of them. Maybe he might not. Like maybe I might post an episode that I know is not going to do very well, but it's something that I think is important to talk about. And so I'm going to do it anyway, even though the algorithm doesn't like it. You know what I mean? Okay. Well, there's more I could say to add to the lists of pros and especially cons. And I'm aware that my list of cons is much longer than my list of pros. So doesn't that mean that it's not worth it? Not necessarily. One thing I was thinking about as I was planning this episode is, if I wasn't a content creator, like what would I be doing instead? And of course we can't know. I only know what I know right now. But I'm thinking like the most likely outcomes are either that I would be seeing more therapy clients and potentially feeling more tired because of it, because I think I'm at about my cap right now at 8 to 10 clients a week, emotionally speaking. And I also wouldn't even be generating as much income. Even if I saw 30 clients a week, I would not be generating as much income as I am as a content creator. So I'd be working more and more tired and making less money. And the other viable possibility is I would just not be seeing more clients and just have way less money. I would just be using that time for self-care, or I don't know what I would be doing if I wasn't a content creator. I have been making content for literally 15 years. So that feels a little bit similar to like, what would I be doing if I wasn't a therapist? It's like, I've been planning to be a therapist since I was 14. What do you mean not being a therapist? But I know there are other things. But all that said, like for me, being a content creator is a net win. The advantages, the pros far outweigh the cons. And to me, the cons all just require specific boundaries. And I just have to make sure that I always come back to those values, to those boundaries, and I take care of myself rather than sort of like sliding into the flow of the algorithm. It kind of feels like it's an avalanche and I have to kind of be like, I just won't stand near it. But it is really easy to slide into. So yeah, I think the biggest pluses for me are the flexibility, being able to work for myself, and the capacity to generate income at a scale that is just far outside of what I'd be able to generate as a therapist. And bonus, I have not raised my rates nearly as much as I would in my therapy practice because I'm generating so much income from generating content. I waited 5 years during the pandemic to raise my rates. And typically up until then, I was raising my rate yearly by like $5 or $10 a session. So, yeah, I was able to do that because of private practice skills as well. So there's a balance. I had originally intended on putting a Q&A in this extended cut version of the episode because I put a poll on Instagram asking you all to share what your questions were about content creation, and you sent some really great questions. But I've already been recording for what feels like a very long time. So I think the extended cut is already plenty extended, if you know what I mean. So maybe I'll save that Q&A in my back pocket for another episode. But hopefully this can help you think through whether being a content creator is worth it for you. And something that I've said before in other episodes and I stand by is whatever kind of content you're creating, you have to choose something that you enjoy. It's hard to imagine another way of going about it because it has to be intrinsically rewarding. The creative process and whatever you're speaking on has to bring you joy all by itself, even if nobody is listening or watching, even if you never make any money from it. Very similar to like a DIY project for me, where it's like, I'm not doing a DIY project to make money or to get accolades. I'm doing a DIY project because I love doing a DIY project. And then when it comes to content creation, it's just a bonus that I'm able to generate income. And hopefully I'm also supporting other people in various ways through the content I create. So I think that value is what allows content creation to remain sustainable for me over a long period of time. And I think that's also where people who end up burning out get snagged so much, is that they start to overly lean into feeding the algorithm or generating whatever's trendy or stepping away from whatever they're most enjoying. and they end up kind of losing touch with why they're doing it, except for, I don't know, accolades or income. And then it's not good for you anymore. For me, it is worth it to be a content creator. And I think it could be worth it for a lot of people to be a content creator who aren't content creators now. But I think the information that we end up finding out there about how to do it well, I don't know, there's some like not good information out there. It's not a get rich quick scheme. Like it's not about figuring out what's trendy and doing that. Like that will work for a while, but you'll lose yourself in it. And I've seen that happen so many times over. And it's more about finding something that's sustainable, that's meaningful, that's aligned with your values. And yeah, if you grow more slowly or don't get as many followers or views because you're doing something you love, like to me, that's a win. That is a win. You can't just make something that everyone loves. I mean, you can. I guess you can. Maybe for some people that's good, but not the majority of people. I'm just trailing off now. Well, I hope you found this episode helpful, and also feel free to chime in the comments with any questions you have about being a content creator, because I think I'm going to record a separate episode where I answer your questions. I didn't get to those in this episode because it was already long, okay? And until next time, from one therapist to another, I wish you well.